Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Ar-Rahman Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Amin. Inna fatahna laka fathan mubinan liyaghfira laka ma taqaddama min dhanbika wa ma ta'akhkhar wa yutimma ni'matahu 'alayka wa yahdiyaka siratan mustaqiman wa yansuruka Allahu nasran azizan huwa allazi anzala as-sakinata fi qulubil mu'minina liyazdadu imanan ma'a imanihim walillahi junudus samawati wal ardi wa kana Allahu aliman hakiman bihurmati Allahumma fasalli wa sallim wa barik ala hadhihi nabiyil karim Sayyidi sanadil azim zul qalbir rahim Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina azaban nar Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin Amin.
Amin. Shukran, Imam Jallo. Bishop, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Lord God of power and might, the Creator, Sustainer, and Preserver of all human beings that you have created and planted in every nation of the world. We continue to ask that you look kindly upon each and every one of us. Forgive our human imperfections, our human frailty, our human weakness, our human sinfulness, and all the evil things that we do as human beings towards one another and against you. We pray that by your Holy Spirit's power, that you will grant each and every one of us the grace to exercise humility, meekness, patience, respect for one another, and the rule of law. As we continue the TRRC sitting this morning, we continue to pray that you shall grant the witness to be bold enough to speak the truth. Grant the commission the discerning spirit to discern between truth and falsehood. And we continue to pray for the populace, the diaspora, and the international community at large, that you grant each and every one of them the equal dose of extra patience to allow the due process to take its proper course. And at the end of the day, you shall reward each and every one accordingly. This we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Bishop Odiko. Council, if we are ready with this morning's witness, you may please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, and members of the audience. We are ready to proceed with the witness from yesterday. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Mbai. Welcome back to the TRRC.
Mr. Mbai, ñu ngi la nuyu di la dalalaat TRRC.
May I remind you that you're still under oath?
maa ngi la fàttali ne ba tey waat bi nga waatoon démb yaa ngi ci biir waat boobu.
I would also remind you that it is a violation of the laws of this country to provide false or misleading information.
di la fàttali tamit ne yaxaluwaa réew mi la bu fekkee ne joxe nga fi benn xibaar boo xam ne doonul dëgg wala dafa réeral fii.
Such information given to a truth commission as this one or to have been made under oath.
loo xam ne joxe nga ko fii ci commission bi wala boo nga def ko jamono joo xam ne waat nga ba pare.
May I remind you of the protocols also that you speak after the interpretation.
Ma fàttali la ba léegi tamit ne balaa ngaa tontu da ngaa xaar bañ làppatoo laajte bi ba pare.
And that we should both avoid overlapping speeches.
Ñun ñëpp nag ku ci nekk moytandiku suñ kàddu yi teglandoo.
Before we closed for the day yesterday, we were talking about the decrees that were passed by the AFPRC junta during your tenure as Attorney General.
Demba balaañ doon wàcc nag ñu ngi doon waxtaanee mbiri luwaay yi nga xam ne soldaar AFPRC taxawaloon nañ ko te jamono jooju yow yaa nekkoon Attorney General.
And the purpose of this inquiry is to show the violation of rights that were inherent, that were inbuilt in these decrees.
Léegi nag li nga xam ne moom lañ cee seetlu mooy fànn yi nga xam ne yàq nañ ci yelleefi doomu aadama ci biir luwaa yooyu noonu.
I now refer to decree number 11.
Léegi nag ñu dem ci fànn boobu ñoo wax decree number 11.
This is the Public Assets and Properties Recovery Decree.
Loolu nag mu ngi aju ci li nga xam ne noonu la ñoo jotaate ci li nga xam ne moo di alal yi ak moomeef yi nit ñi.
Otherwise known as the Akoto Bamfo Commission.
ñu xamee ko ci commission bi nga xam ne Akoto Bamfo moo ko jiite woon.
And Mr. Mbai, I hope you have looked at these decrees. But the decrees targeted individuals who were living above their pay grade.
Dafa mel ni degree yooyu nag dafa am ñoo xam ne daal ñoom lañ ci doon natta ñoom lañ doon seetlu seeni mbir tax ñu dugal ko ci biir degree bi.
And all it was looking for is whether they maintained a standard of living above which was commensurate with their past official emoluments.
Yëpp liñ doon seet nag mooy li nga xam ne moo di seen am tolluwaay bi fa nga xam ne moom la tollu buñ ko méngali ak balaañ leen doon jox place boobu.
Are you familiar with that, Mr. Mbai? I am looking at specifically section 2 B1 of the decree. It states the terms of reference of the commissions are, and then point B, to inquire and investigate into the activities of all persons referred to in paragraph that and that and that.
What number is it? Decree number?
11.
Of 1994.
Yes, sir. And it was dated in November 1994. And it targeted basically most senior officers in police, military, local government, managing directors, top civil servants, and ambassadors and ministers. And what it was looking for is whether they maintained a standard of living above that which was commensurate with the past official emoluments. That is too sweeping, Mr. Mbai, isn't it? Too sweeping.
It was a good decree.
Degree bu baax la woon de.
To ensure accountability.
Pour gis nag ne danañ doxal njub.
People are found to live beyond their means.
But Mr. Mbai, is that a violation of laws, to live beyond one's means? But no, in fact, this is not living beyond one's means. It's living beyond one's official emoluments.
Loolu nag dafa mel ni xanaa loolu dañ ko mën a ooyee ne yàq luwaa la bu fekkee ne nit ki li nga xam ne noonu laa dundee ci wàlli amam weesu na ko.
Even in the civilian government.
Ci nguuri civilian yi.
It was never followed.
Toppuñu woon ko.
Although it was provided in letters when ministers are being appointed.
Ndax dañ ko toftoon ci ay lettre ci anam yi nga xam ne ni ministre yi ñu ngi leen ay noonu lañ leen fale.
To declare their assets.
Pour nag ñu yébaane nag li nga xam ne ni moom lañ am ci alal.
This decree.
Ci degree bi nag.
Was in the same spirit.
moom it ci benn taxawaay bi rek la.
Mr. Mbai, the intention may have been that.
Yes.
Mr. Mbai jubluwaay bi nag mun naa doon loolu.
But what is captured in the decree is completely different. What you described is like opening a window. This is opening doors, several doors into the house. Because a lot of people may have lived beyond their official emoluments, but through income that was legitimately earned.
Mun naa am ay nit yoo xam ne ñoo dundee ci sa gis-gis ëpp na li nga xam ne moom la ñoo am ci seen wàlli payoor waaye xëj na nag am na yeneen bunta yoo xam ne ñu ngi cee amee.
And this decree does not seem to provide for any exception for those things.
Te decree bii nag feeñal benn foo xam ne bàyyi nañ ko gannaaw ci mbir mi.
It does not create for any defense of legitimately earned property. Just says you live above your means, above your official emoluments, you are captured, you are caught.
Whereas others may have property, they earn more income.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I'm glad when you said that might have been, that was the intention of the decree. I think when interpreting any statute, we will agree that it is right that we look for the intention of the legislature. In this case, maybe the council. But I'm not quarreling with your assessment of it.
And even if we look at the application, this was the decree that was most complained about by the people who were affected at the time, especially in terms of the egregious violations of rights that were meted out on those people. People were unceremoniously booted out of their homes. Yes. Their jewelry, possessions, and things were confiscated.
The application was wrong.
Buñ ko seetloo nag decree bi sax mooy bi nga xam ne nit yi gën nañ koo tawat ndaxte dafa mel ni dafa am ay nit yoo xam ne rek ñoom lañ teg but di nangu seeni alal di jël seeni takkaay ak yu mel noonu.
And there is no louder or more eloquent testimony of that than my own life, my own experience.
Amuna ben bo xamne gën na ci doweram lu wessu ko man li nga xamne lu la ci sédé comme suma
I've been evicted from my property for 9 years.
Ndax dañ ma génné ci suma kër lu dem ci juroom ñenti at.
But as I indicated to you earlier when you met me in the room,
comme ni mala ko wone sank biñ tassé ci néeg bi,
as Attorney General,
comme ni Attorney General ministre bi saytu wali loi ci réew mi,
at the time,
ci jamono joju,
I cannot deny
mënuma ko wéddi
the nature and extent
ni nga xamé non la anam gi nim tollu
these decrees
ci degree bi
the violation and abuse of human rights
ni nga xamé non la xété yelé fi doom adama.
But I sought to say that if I am allowed to give a statement
way nak su fekké né may nañ ma joxe ay cadeau
that will explain the context
nga xamné dana léral nak li nga xamné lolu la ëmb
of these decrees
ci degree bi,
and that would help us, that will shorten the proceedings on these decrees.
Ndax dana gàttal nag suñ teewaay ci degree yi suñ waxtaan.
And will help us to come to a very amicable agreement on my responsibility.
Te kon boobaa danañ tase nag si anam gu yomb ci li nga xam ne nii mu ngi jëm ci suma wareef ci li ma gàddu woon.
Not for the enactment of these decrees.
Nekkul nag ni ñu roqande ko degree boobu.
But as Attorney General at the time,
I Attorney General ci jamono boobu,
I cannot be free from their results, their consequences.
Duma mën a rëcc nag ci li nga xam ne ni mu ngi jëm ci seen wàlli.
Because I myself was a victim of these decrees.
Ndax man ci suma bopp de nekk naa koo xam ne loru woon naa ci loi yooyu.
So will I be allowed to make this statement?
Ndax danañ ma may ma wax.
Yes, very well, Mr. Mbai, but let's do it step by step. Okay. You are entitled to explain and the circumstances surrounding the making of these degrees, and to say whatever you believe you need to say in your own interest. But in the meantime, we need to know why were these decrees very bad law, and we also want to show why was it so obvious to all lawyers that these were bad laws, not just at the implementation stage, but at the drafting stage. Because the moment you look at it, the few things as one should look at as a lawyer is what are the safeguards against abuse that are inbuilt in these laws, considering already that the Constitution, which is the safe haven of the people for the protection of their rights, has been tossed out. Now everybody was left vulnerable at the mercy of young boys, most of them with very little experience, and with awesome power and the barrel of the gun. That is why it was so important to all of us that, in fact, there were people like yourself, Uncle Fafa, who would look at these things and say, hang on, wait a minute, where are the protections for the people? And if you look at Decree 11, there are no inbuilt protections. All the powers were just given to the Commission, period. There is no judicial oversight of the exercise of the powers of this Commission. In fact, where it became apparent that there may be judicial oversight, the jurisdiction was ousted. And this is quite creative legislative drafting.
Let me buttress your point.
Yes.
When they took me to the Algali Commission, on the reassessment of my tax, I have already paid tax for the whole period. They reassessed me from the day I started practice in 1980. Until 1994. And came up with the ridiculous sum of $4 million areas of tax. When we sought to challenge that, after 6 months, 6 years, the Commission of Inquisitor cannot reassess any tax after 6 years. They amended the decree, gave it a limitless time. So my challenge on law was written by the amendment of the decree. So I very much know what you are talking about.
Yes, and the point we are trying to make is, as at the time you were Attorney General, these problems ought to have been obvious. And that's the point I'm trying to make. We would later discuss how they negatively affected you.
Yeah.
And for us, we condemn the bad application of these degrees to other people, just like we would condemn their bad application to you and those after you. In a sense, we condemn all rights violations.
And that was my anthem.
Yeah.
Both in the council and in the cabinet.
Fantastic.
That was why I was called the Human Rights Attorney General. So as Chairman Yaya Jammeh would say, Abu Dentin's defense lawyer.
And even that time, to a lot of people, it looked like some people were deliberately targeted. Pacham, Abu Dentin, Badu Fai, Usainu Njai. A lot of these people appeared to have been targeted for abuse.
Those names never came up in the meetings that I attended. The effect of the decrees affected them. No names were ever mentioned in the council meetings or cabinet that I attended. But the target, of course, as you put it, it became affected.
In fact, the targeting was so blatant that it was legislative. The laws, some you would see, they broad brushes, all managing directors, all secretaries of this, but some of these decrees, they name specific individuals. Abu Danti, Badufai, Usainu Njai. That is a terrible way of legislating.
Yes. You can name officers, but not individuals.
Yes.
These were in the schedules.
Yes. But the Attorney General was given the power to amend these schedules.
No, no.
I would take you to Decree 14.
Decree 14.
I don't have Decree 14.
I'll send it to you, sir. It's an amendment to the Public Assets and Properties Recovery Decree. If you look at Section 2, the power to determine who would be subjected to this was given to the Attorney General.
Decree 14?
Yes, it's an amendment to the parent or the principal decree on the public assets recovery, and it says that the power to amend is given to this schedule is given to the Attorney General.
The power that may, by order published in the Gazette, amend the schedule.
Exactly. So it therefore means the Attorney General had the power to determine who was to be subjected to this bad law.
Yes.
You agree, sir?
Yes, yeah, it's in the decree.
Wow. Right.
Council, is that the sole purpose of that decree?
Yes.
Amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
It is. It says the AFPRC hereby decrees as follows. This decree may be cited as the Public Assets and Properties Recovery Amendment Decree 1994. And Section 2, the Public Assets and Properties Recovery Decree 1994 is amended by inserting immediately after Section 25 the following new section. And it says Amendment of Schedule 25A. The Attorney General may, by order published in the Gazette, amend the schedule.
What's the date of the decree?
16 November 1994.
Thank you.
So are we sure that it was not amended?
The schedule?
Yes.
I have not seen an amendment to it during your time as Attorney General.
No, and the order published in the Gazette. No, I'm just not too sure. Are you sure that there was no order published in the Gazette amending the schedule?
I have not seen any.
Yeah.
And to be quite candid, I did not check that. Yeah. I was more interested in showing that this power was given to the Attorney General.
Because I remember from the top of my head when Lamin Boran Bush, and Khalifa Samba were put in the schedule of a particular decree. But the period that was relevant to the decree was a time when they were not ministers.
Okay.
And so I remember Mr. Wada in Perseverance Street, came to point this out, and we deleted their names. I can remember that.
Yes,
but I'm not too sure whether there was any
Gazette
public order as published in the Gazette amending the schedule of this decree.
That's right.
Okay. Maybe that's not conclusive.
Yes, but my point, Mr. Mbai, is the fact that this authority was given to the Attorney General.
Agreed.
While you were Attorney General.
Yes.
So lima leral fi rek moy dole bi mom dañ ko joxone ministre bi seytone wali luway ci jamono boba yow la won.
And technically, this means that if a name remains on the list, it is your doing as Attorney General. If a name is removed from the list, it is your doing as Attorney General. Because now the power to control the list has been given to you as Attorney General.
Yow dafa des ci Attorney General bi kuñ ci dugal turam it des na ci Attorney General ndaxte jamono boobu jox nañ la doole boo xam ne mën ngaa dugal mën a génne.
Bon nag mu ngi mel ni ku turam nekk ci liste bi ak ku ci turam génn sa liggéey la comme Attorney General.
Agree.
nangu naa.
I want to share, if I am allowed to make my statement.
We would come to that, Mr.
All these issues would be clarified and will come to a conclusion.
That is right, but for the purposes of transparency and for the purposes of the public record, so that we can appreciate what this means, we should just go through the decrees one by one and deal with them. Then the freezing of assets and other properties decree, and this one is for specified persons actually. This is a deliberate targeting of particular individuals. This is Decree 15 of 25th November. And Mr. Mbai, this is, you freeze the assets of people even before any judicial inquiry, even before any prima facie evidence of any wrongdoing. That is terrible law.
Yes.
I agree.
And it affected Momodou Malik Diba, Modu Dudu Shinyan, Babu Kargai, Ibrahim Finton Singate. These are Gambia Cooperative Authorities guys. Alaji Mikalo Jallo, Dembo Kante, Malik Njai, Kalilu Rahman Jaite, Lamin Job, Cherno Finton Singate. Yes. So this is another bad one. And the provisions are just sweeping. And then let's go to the next one, Decree 16, which is the worst of the worst. That is the economic crimes decree, which was the weapon of choice for Yahya Jammeh to go after every public servant he wanted to go after if you have at any stage controlled an economic resource of this country. And do you agree with that assessment, Mr. Mbai?
I agree that the decree was sweeping, but economic crime is found in civilian government.
nangu naa nag ni bi doy na waaye nag lu jëm ci wàlli tafaari koom-koom nekk na loo xam ne ni feeñ na ci nguuri civilian.
I'm not defending the decree.
naam nag nekkuma nag di dëgëral nag degree boobu de.
And the context will explain.
You will come to the context later, and I think this context is very important. We would give you ample opportunity to explain it. But you would agree that, in fact, the criminal code had sufficient provisions to deal with economic crimes issues, like economic losses for government. There were specific provisions which enable their prosecution. So it was not necessary to come up with this decree in order to prosecute economic crimes. Do you agree with that?
In order to provide the offense of economic crime.
Yes. So what this decree did is, in fact, to specifically highlight economic crimes by giving them a new label and a new regime for prosecution, especially on the issue of bail. It made bail basically almost very difficult for anybody who's charged with economic crimes. Do you recall that?
Yes, I recall that, and even before that, we had the Special Criminal Courts Act, by which people who have been found to, who are alleged to have stolen public money, be arrested and taken to a special penal court where there were severe conditions for bail.
That's right.
That was the case. That became a case when Mamadou Diop was prosecuted and convicted here and appealed to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal allowed his appeal, and we appealed to the Privy Council. I prosecuted that case before the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council, accompanied by my Solicitor General at the time, Mr. Hassan Jallo. And some of the provisions were declared by the Privy Council as against due process.
Exactly.
Although the other provisions were safe, and that was the civilian government.
That's true.
But then this decree made it worse.
Exactly.
By limiting due process.
Exactly. But what you just cited, sir, is very important and vital experience. I think every recently qualified lawyer in this country is directed to that case.
Yes.
Because it's such a seminal case in this country, yes. Because it deals with government excesses and government overreach, a very important case. And it's so refreshing that you prosecuted that case with the present Chief Justice, who was your then Solicitor General. But what is surprising?
It's reported in the Commonwealth Law Report.
Yes, that's right. But what is surprising is that in spite of the lessons learned in that case, what is done with this legislation, with this decree? Societies are meant to be progressive, but this is a retrogressive step, you would agree, in terms of protecting rights of people.
And having regard to my experience being the prosecutor before the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council, the prosecutor of our appeal, having regard to that, that in itself explains my frustration with these decrees, and the context of them will explain.
Indeed. We would come to that. One other important issue here is Section 4 of this decree.
Section 4
change the ball game entirely in favor of the state. In Gambia, the rule was when you can be arrested and detained for 48 hours, then released. Later, the APRC changed it to 72 hours.
Gambia fi munon nañu téye nit ki da waaye dañ la war a bàyyi diiri ñaari fan waaye gannaaw loolu nangoru APRC ñoo soppali ko def ko ñetti fan.
But this decree enables them to detain you for 30 days before you are taken before a court.
waaye decree bii nag ñoo soppali yépp nga xam ne dinañ la mën a teg benn place fanweeri fan balaa ñu la yóbbu ci kanam attekaay bi.
That is very severe, isn't it?
loolu nag lu métti la.
That is contrary to all international norms.
But
not as bad as what is found in the
Guantanamo Bay
in Cuba.
Well,
which was administered by the Americans. Not as bad as the situation in Guantanamo Bay, administered by the Americans, the greatest democracy.
That's right. But for me, Mr. Mbai, very bad and bad are all bad.
Yes. But I'm saying the champion of human rights can be guilty of that.
That's right.
As vast as the United States.
Indeed.
I think I'm not defending it.
Yes.
I'm explaining it.
And another provision here is where a person is convicted under this decree, he shall be liable to the public, he should be liable to a fine of the amount of loss caused to the public body and shall in addition be imprisoned. That is very draconian.
Yes.
Although li nga xamne mom lañ la feyeku li ci nguur gi dépasse yépp dang ko wara fay ba paré tek ci nak ne mën nañ la tëral
dédé dañ la tëj par force.
In my experience as a magistrate,
ci suma atté ni jamono ne magistrate la
in the middle 70s to 80s,
bori atum 1970s jëm 80s,
I have had occasion
amna xew-xew melni
to convict a person
pour nak tëj nit
and order him to pay the amount of money involved.
Pour nak mu fay nak li nga xamné ni mom lañ ko tuumal ne loolu la kasara,
as well as go to prison.
Dana dem kaso.
There are laws
amna loi yo xamné
which provide
yo xamné woné na né
that you can convict
ne mun nga tëj
sentence, an order to, and fine. Cases that carry both penalty of imprisonment and fine. There are even provisions where you convict an order to pay. I did that in a few times. And legitimately in my right as a magistrate at the time.
Yes, sir.
During a very good civilian government.
Yes,
these are provisions in the law.
Yes. I mean, Mr. Mbai, you did very important cases in the legal history of this country. And we thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And for everything you have done to help improve the justice sector in this country.
Mr. Mbai, am na liggéey yu baax yu am solo yoo xam ne def nga ko ci bunti àtte bi fii ci biir réew mi te loolu ñu ngi la cee sant bu baax a baax am na liggéey yu rafet yoo xam ne def nga ko ci bunta yooyu.
But that said,
waaye ba léegi
for economic losses,
ci li nga xam ne moo di ñàkk gi ñàkk ci wàlli koom ci réew mi.
It's not about theft only.
nekkul ne mbiri càcca rek la de.
It's also about actions a person may have taken or failed to take which caused the country to lose economically.
Mu ngi aju nag ci nit ki jëf ji nga xam ne def na ko wala waroon na koo def te defut ko nga xam ne sabab na ñàkk ci wàlli koomi réew mi.
This could arise as a result of a recklessness or a result of a lapse, a result of negligence, and not deliberate theft. In such circumstances, if the government could recover what has been lost, must the person also go to jail? By force? It looks to me that this is very bad law. This is taking a cutlass to cut something that could have easily been done, could have easily been cut using a scalpel.
Yeah, well, using a hammer to kill a mosquito.
Yes.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. You see, I remember as a legal practitioner, as a state counsel, a Mauritanian shopkeeper was charged with selling a tin of pig milk beyond the control price. Then there was control price. Beyond the control price. Alaji M. Drame of blessed memory was his defense lawyer. Alaji Drame lawyer. And I was the state counsel to prosecute him. When the case was called, I rose up to be the Drame rose up to be the appellant's lawyer. To be the accused lawyer. And I rose to be the state counsel prosecuting the Mauritanian. I remained standing. And the judge asked me whether I had something to say. I said the charge against the accused, because he was convicted and he appealed, and there was an order that he be deported. Then they went on appeal. I remained, and the judge asked me, I said, the conviction under which this man was convicted, the charge under which, the law under which he was convicted is selling a tin of pig milk above the control price. The conviction carries a fine. But not a sentence to imprisonment. But the only offense for which one could be deported is where the charge or the offense carries a conviction and a fine. He's selling a tin of milk beyond the control price.
Does
not amount to an offense where you could be deported.
Be
deported, the offense must carry both penalty of imprisonment and a fine.
And
this is my position. Let me finish. And the man was acquitted. Alaji Drame came out and gave me his checkbook. He said, write whatever amount you want. I said, no, I'm a state council. I'm a minister of justice.
State council.
This is the law, and I've simply stated it.
Indeed. That was quite honorable behavior. That is the highest ethical standards expected of every lawyer. So we thank you for acting as a Minister of Justice in that particular instant. I hope these are things that our budding lawyers would learn from and trying to emulate. But in this particular instance, it looked like the legislator, in this case, the council. But I must imagine that this must have been the advice of lawyers, because we all know the council. It was not a very sophisticated group at that time to be able to discern all these technicalities. They must have been guided by seasoned lawyers who knew the intricacies and the mechanics of this thing to be able to structure this in such a way that the stinging effect that the executive wanted is captured in the legislation.
The draftsman, would better explain that.
Yes, but
I wouldn't agree. The lawyers knew. Lawyers did this deliberately. Let me remind you. The council came with an agenda. With a program. The legal draftsmen in the chambers of the Attorney General would do anything that would show their competence in drafting. Not to allow a loophole, not to open a door. They would be proud to make a tight law that people will not escape from. I'm not speaking for them, but professionally, I know this is the type of thing they do. Drafting involves that.
That's right. No,
although I'm not defending the decree.
That's right. And I agree with all that, because I am also a trained parliamentary counsel. So you are trained to write very clearly and to ensure that you cover all your bases. All right. But there are certain things that are based almost entirely on instruction. For instance, we all know that the international standard is you should be released within a short period of time during investigations or taken before a judge to judicially sanction your detention. That is a basic principle of law.
Yes.
Okay. To decide that a person shall be detained for 30 days before the person is taken to court would not be the decision of the draftsperson. That should be the decision of the decision maker of the executive, wouldn't it?
No, I would say that would be the effect of the legislation. And legislations are interpreted depending on different principles.
Yes.
The literary rule, the golden rule, the purposive rule are developed by Lord Denning.
That's right.
What is the purpose of the act? What were we trying to cure from the previous law? Or the literal rule, which is the bad one, that you must interpret the legislation according to words expressed in the act. So there are different rules of interpretation. And I wouldn't venture to to say that these were deliberate intentions by lawyers who were advanced and knew what they were doing. No, the purpose would be subject to the interpretation by the court.
That's true.
And the court interprets legislation. And what the court say would determine the law. Not even what the legislature passed.
Yes, I do agree entirely with that. But the point I am making here is in the face of the international standard, or what was the standard in Gambia, of detention of 48 hours or 72 hours, within which period you should be taken before a judge. To change that and to give the authority the power to detain a person for 30 days without taking the person to court, that must have been a decision of the executive and not the draftsman.
I'm not defending it. But I'm explaining it in the same terms that we've agreed to use.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to another decree. And this time we go back to the freezing of assets decree. And this time, certain individuals.
Is it 17?
17, yes.
Yeah.
Certain individuals were directly targeted. From Sarah Jangha, Abu Dentin, Mbambajik B.I. Job, that would be Daddy Job, Sheriang Sise, Momodu Gay, Momodu O Gay, Omar B. Cham, Malik I.M. Cham, Ibundur, Hussein Njai. This is basically the same set of people again.
Yes.
And this was a blanket freeze of their assets, but not only that, including the assets of those who were close to them, so close to them that it gave the appearance that they have something to do with those assets. That's how sweeping the law was.
Yes.
These were terrible laws.
They are terrible laws, but not so much different from the Special Criminal Courts Act, the jurisdiction that was given to the Special Criminal Court Act during the civilian government.
Okay, but it is one thing.
I'm not. I say I'm not justifying it.
Okay.
But I'm trying to point that there's a genesis to this, even as far back as the civilian government.
And that
was the issue of our appeal before the Privy Council.
That's right.
Some of the provisions of the Special Criminal Court Act were violations of human rights, especially the bail or tracing. If I'm accused or charged under the Act, and I simply pass my motor vehicle to my nephew or my wife, of course, the law provided that we could trace the property to its destination. This was in the same spirit, without justifying the decree, is what have found itself in it, although without naming names, because the Special Criminal didn't name names, only provided provisions, mainly made provisions for tracing illegally gotten property, right down to its destination.
Indeed.
You cannot during the period for which you are charged with an offense, to automatically transfer the title of your property to somebody thinking that would save you.
That's right. And that is quite reasonable, and I agree with that. The only problem I have with this decree, it's the broad nature of the decree. It's not even limited to assets that are directly traceable to the persons listed, but anybody who is close in proximity to this person and has assets that may be suspected to have been linked to the person named in the schedule is also affected. Well, so now let's look at Decree 25.
Decree 25.
And this decree, Section 15A, an amended provision, basically ousted the jurisdiction of the court.
I don't have it, but I'll take what you're saying.
Let me read it out.
No, read it out, yes.
It says limitation of jurisdiction.
I agree. I was a victim of that decree.
That's true. But this decree was drafted by you, not you physically, Uncle Fafa.
Yes, I'm glad you are making the clarification.
Yes.
I didn't draft any decree.
Yes, by the Office of the Attorney General under your direction and supervision.
By the drafting division of the Attorney General's chambers.
But we both know.
Which was a department in the Attorney General's chambers when I was Attorney General and Minister of Justice.
That's right. And I had the good fortune to be recruited at the Attorney General's chambers during your tenure as minister.
That's right.
Yes.
And you were very happy to be there.
Thank you. And Mr. Mbai, soon after I got trained in writing laws. And one thing I must say is that the draftsman is just the taxi driver.
Wa man liggéey naa ci saroon foofu te li ma bëgg a wax rek mooy ki nga xam ne moom mooy bindakat bi dafa mel ni rek moom dawalkati taxi la.
The government through the Attorney General would state their destination.
Nguur gi jaarale ko ci ki nga xam ne mooy Attorney General bi ñoo leen di wax fa nga xam ne foofu la ñoo jaar.
And even the routes they want the driver to take.
Ak sax bañ yoon lañ bëgg mu jaar.
As a driver, we just drive expertly.
To take
you to the destination safely, economically, and on time, and to avoid all difficulties and problems that may occasion us taking you to the destination.
But unlike taxi drivers,
will
take any passenger, saint or sinner. Draftsmen do not behave like taxi drivers in that regard.
That's a good one, but for us, we carry only one passenger.
Well, you brought the taxi driver analogy, and I'm saying taxi drivers are different from draftsmen. Taxi drivers will take any passenger, whether you are a saint or a sinner.
Yes, but for us as draftsmen, we have only one passenger, and that is government.
No, as draftsmen are specialists.
Yes.
They are specialists. I don't agree that they are passengers to any government. I don't agree. They are specialists of great honor. They try to make the law understood.
I want to read out this particular provision. As a student of drafting, we studied colonial laws to show how bad the colonial masters used to draft these laws to continue to subjugate us. But to be quite candid, I have never seen a provision like this. Let me read it out. It says, no court shall have jurisdiction to entertain any action or proceeding whatsoever for the purpose of questioning any decision, finding, conclusion, or order, or proceeding of a commission made under this decree. This is a sweeping ouster clause. It's completely illegal. All jurisprudence says that, well, we discussed Anis Minik yesterday, the beginning of all this list of judgments, string of judgments against ouster clauses. This is a direct affront to Anis Minik principle.
Yes.
And it does not stop there. It went on to say, and for the avoidance of doubt, it shall not be lawful for any court to entertain any application for an order or writ in the nature of habeas corpus Saturday mandamus in prohibition, quo warranto, injunction, or declaration. This decree oust every form of protection an individual could have under the law of this country.
Decree bi daal loi la boo xam ne dafa dax lépp loo xam ne moo war a mun a aar nit ki ci wàlli loi yi nga xam ne moom la ñoo doxee fii ci réew mi.
Yes, I want to.
Yes, please.
To confirm that.
Yes.
When the Algali Commission made those findings against me, that I owe a tax liability, I had a tax of over $1.5 million. I instituted a suit in the Supreme Now High Court. Justice Adio was the presiding judge. Exactly relied on that provision to say that he cannot hear my case. That his jurisdiction was ousted by the decree. I instructed Edrissa and partners to file a notice of appeal before the Gambia Court of Appeal. This was the record of proceedings. The High Court and the notice of appeal to the Gambia Court of Appeal. And that was when Radio Gambia made the broadcast that all those champions of human rights were not keeping quiet, were not shutting their mouth. We very soon find themselves 6 feet deep. And I did not pursue the appeal. But if I was acting for a client in that situation, I would have relied on the many decisions made by Lord Denning. You've mentioned this. Yeah, made by Lord Denning to succeed in that appeal. As a lawyer, any lawyer is a fool who acts for himself.
But that is true. But what is ironic, Mr. Mbai, is that this decree was written the 23rd day of December 1994, when you were Attorney General.
1994 December Attorney General.
And it was written at the Ministry of Justice under your direction and supervision, with the full knowledge that this is a blatant violation of, well, would open the door for the blatant violation of rights of Gambians. And in fact, took away all the recourse that a Gambian could have for protection.
Yes. Wow. But if I stood as legal practitioner for a client to challenge that decree, I would have succeeded in having it struck out, relying on the many decisions by Lord Denning.
Well, it looked like we had a compliant judiciary, doesn't it? Seeing that the case that you took to court was in fact thrown out, yes, mainly on not in reliance to those strings of decisions, but in full application of the decree as contemplated by your office when it was written.
Yeah, but I knew that the judge was wrong.
Mr. Mbai, we have to allow for the interpretation before you respond.
I'm sorry.
It is interesting when two lawyers talk.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
Yes, that's right. But let's move on to this other decree. This is Decree 26.
Decree 26.
This is State Security detention of armed and police personnel. This one is also another violation of rights. These people were arrested in July 22nd. Or thereabout. They were detained at mile 2 for months. And now they pass a decree giving it retroactive effect to legitimize or to legalize their detention. What do you say to that?
That was wrong. It's a matter of law, it's a matter of principle. You cannot make a retroactive provision with a penalty. Ordinarily. So that emphasizes that type of law was bad.
And this was passed on the 9th day of February 1995. While you were Attorney General. And now go to the last decree. This is also freezing of accounts. This again specified individuals. And this one, let's look at section 2. Section 2. It says the accounts of this person specified in the schedule and any other accounts relating to them which are owned or operated by another person are hereby frozen with immediate effect. This is terrible. Not only what they owned, but anything that is owned or operated by another person, which somehow had a relationship, is also frozen. This is a very good example of using a hammer to really kill a mosquito. Isn't it, Mr. Mbai?
Well, I won't agree using a hammer to kill a mosquito. But maybe extending the rod to another person.
That's even worse.
Well, that's
the way it was. These are all terrible pieces of legislation that were passed during your time as Attorney General.
By the council. That were enacted by the council.
That's it's been said, Mr. Mbai, and you'd have an opportunity to say more on this, that your second stint as Attorney General was aimed mainly to draw from experiences of 1992. Aimed at helping a government in distress to deal with a myriad of security problems. I have no position on this. But I just thought it's only fair that you are given an opportunity to say something about this, just to clarify the record. There was assets evaluation or something at around 1982. 1982, There were security detainees and a tribunal to review their detentions.
The
same template was applied in 1994. Perhaps maybe that explains the desperation of the APRC junta to bring you back in 1994. Because they wanted the same machinery to be able to deal with the problems they were facing at the time. You could address that when you deal with the context and explain what happened in 82 and the similarities with 94.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Can I make my statement?
Not yet, Mr. Mbai.
But please allow me, at this stage, I think I should make my statement.
No, I just have two more points.
You have finished the decrees?
Yes, I have two more points just before you do. Be rest assured, Mr. Mbai, you would be given every opportunity.
Relating to these decrees?
Yes.
Enacted at the time I was Attorney General.
Yes, it's in fact not decrees as such, but some seminal events that took place during that time.
But let me address the decrees first, then we come to that, please.
All right, by all means, go ahead.
Yesterday,
Niki Demba,
we established that the decrees you referred to were introduced either before I was appointed Attorney General, Minister of Justice,
gaaraloon nañ fi ne degré yi nga nekk di wax nag daal di nañ ko taxawal balaa maa nekk ministre bi saytu woon wàlli loi bi ci réew mi.
Within a few days after my appointment.
wala ay bésu njëkk rek yu néew jamono biñ ma tànnee.
As such, I could not have played any meaningful role
ci kaw loolu nag
of any of those.
ama fa benn wàllu wu yaatu lu aju ci wàlli niñ koy doxalee.
Two.
ñaareel bi mooy.
We have established the international jurisprudence on the legality of military coup d'état.
dal di woon nañu waxtaanee tamit li nga xam ne moo nekkoon gis-gis ci lu jëm ci wér ak coup d'état yi soldat.
That once the takeover is successful.
gannaaw boo xamee ne nii rek dal di nañu ko fu nguur gi antu na.
And provided certain conditions are met.
ak yenn sarta yoo xam ne tamit dal di nañu ko mottal.
The new government becomes the effective government of the state.
nguur gu nga xam ne mooy nguuri soldat gu ees googu nag dafay nekk nguur gu sax.
The new government then has the lawful authority to make laws for the purpose of establishing security and order, accountability and protection of human rights.
booba am nañ nag cër ñoom it pour taxawal benn loi boo xam ne dina sàmm kaaraange njub ak tamit lu jëm ci wàlli jaar yoon.
Three.
ñett bi.
Within the office of the Attorney General Chambers.
ci office yi Attorney General Chambers bi.
Was a drafting division.
amoon na fa nag benn kuréel boo xam ne nii seen liggéey moo nekkoon pour bind loi.
Responsible for the drafting of laws or decrees.
pour na bind loi ak wala degree
that the council considered appropriate.
boo xam ne daal council bi danañ gis ne daal jub na.
The Attorney General would give advice where his advice was sought.
Attorney General bi nag jamono boobu dana yedde nag li nga xam ne nii fa la ñu aajoo nag yeddee fam.
But also where his advice was not sought directly.
foo xam ne tamit nag li mu war a yedd nag aajowuñ ko.
But when matters relating to law enforcement were deliberated upon in cabinet or in council meeting.
li nga xam ne mooy lu ayu nag nga xam ne ni ñu koy doxalee dal di woon nañ ko waxtaanee ci kanam cabinet bi.
4.
ñeenteel bi.
My stance had always been to advise against abuses and violations of human rights.
fu ma taxawaay moo nekkoon waxtu wu ne rek di yedde lu jëm ci wàlli ñu oytu di xëtt yelleefi doomu aadama.
But the Attorney General, as the chief government legal advisor.
Attorney General nga xam ne moo jiite nag lépp loo xam ne mu ngi aju ci wàlli loi ci nguur gi.
Takes full responsibility.
warugalam la nag.
The decrees or laws introduced while he is in office.
loi yi wala degré yi nga xam ne moom lañ indi na ci jamono bi mu nekkee ci office bi.
Even if, as in my case,
naam sax ci suma bos.
I have strongly advised against all the decrees that I was aware of and considered to be in violation of fundamental human rights.
daal dinaa si gaara tamit mboolem degré wala loi yooyu noonu nga xam ne na dafa téyelee fi doomu aadama.
But my advice was not always taken.
waaye nag suma wax nag duñ ko daan jël.
Because the conviction of the AFPRC, especially in relation to accountability,
nga xam ne nag loi AFPRC bi ñu ko sonoon ci wàlli compte ñu bi.
was so strongly held at the time.
daal di woon nañu ko dëgëral bu baax.
That nothing could have stopped them but divine intervention.
waaye nag amul dara loo xam ne ni mënutoon nañ na taxawal.
5.
juróomeel bi.
The dilemma of my role as Attorney General and Minister of Justice was a challenging one. To temper the desire of the soldiers for immediate decrease, for immediate redress, by way of accountability against guiding them towards an orderly transition for the restoration to a democratic government within a short period of time. Can I repeat that?
Wow.
The dilemma of my role as Attorney General and Minister of Justice was a challenging one. To temper the desire of the soldiers, immediate redress by way of accountability, against guiding them towards an orderly transition for the restoration of a democratic government. 6. When the soldiers overthrew the former regime, one of their principal reasons was the slow pace of national development. And how that process was stifled by several factors, key among them rampant corruption across most sectors of the country, especially in government. A lot of people believe that their intentions for the nation were well meant and out of genuine love for the people. 7. Naturally, the soldiers had mapped out their own way of how to address some of the fundamental issues that had affected effective and sustainable national development at the time. The decrees can perhaps be examined in the context of the trying challenges the nation had encountered or suffered before the change of government. The soldiers and the people at large wanted accountability of state resources. Accountability is an element of respect for human rights. The question was how to reconcile the process of accountability with due process. This is the existential dilemma that I try to address. The dilemma was that of Jean-Paul Sartre, the French philosopher, who developed the philosophy of existentialism.
The philosophy of existentialism.
Yes. And he brought the case of a French soldier who was supposed to go to war, whilst his mother was seriously ill. Dilemma is existentialist. Going to war as a duty to my country and attending to my sick mother. That's the dilemma I was in. In the context of the Gambia, Africa in particular, and the world at large, there can be legal jurisprudence that corruption can be an abuse and violation of human rights. It may violate the following principles. A. Equality and non-discrimination. B. Right to economic development. C. Right to food. D. Right to adequate housing. E. Right to proper health care.
am cër nag ci wér gu yaram.
F.
Juróom-benn.
Right to education.
am cër ci wàlli njàng.
G.
Juróom-ñaar.
Right to clean water.
ci wàlli ndox mu sell am ci cër.
And H.
Juróom-ñett.
Right to proper infrastructure and clean environment.
ci tamit dëkkuwaay bu set boo xam ne nii bu fiix la.
8.
Juróom-ñeent.
The soldiers believe against better advice.
Soldaar yi nag gëmoon nañ nag li nga xam ne mooy gën a dund bu gën a yéwén.
That the decrees were the most effective way of helping them achieve their objectives.
ne degré yi moo nekkoon li nga xam ne moo leen doon gën a dimbale pour ñu mën a motal nag seen éena.
They were hell-bound to running over anyone who stood in their way.
jamono boobu nag mën nañoo galangante képp koo xam ne ni daal di nga taxaw seen kanam.
They did.
te tamit noonu lañ def.
Koro Cissé. And many others, including my very self.
ak ñeneen ñu mel ni ci suma bopp.
And the suffering I had gone through.
ak coono yi nga xam ne ni jànkuwante naa ko.
The tragedy is that the initial intention they held changed once they tasted power and they became insatiable and their objective changed for the worse.
li nga gën a mooy nekkoon wecci ko ci mooy jamono bi nga xamee ne ni mos nañ nguur lu mu tuuti ak tamit nga xam ne ni booba dëgër nañ.
Going through the decrees one after the other.
buñ demee nag si degré benn par benn.
Would therefore not assist.
nga xam ne ni nag gisul.
Given that I have already stated clearly.
li nga xam ne nag moom lu laa wax ba mu set.
That I had strongly advised against abuses and violation of human rights.
am na saa bu nekk rek maa ngi yeddee lu aju ci wàllu xëtt yelleefi doomu aadama yi.
And in council.
ak tey tamit ci council.
Throughout the period that I was Attorney General and Minister of Justice.
ci jamono bi nga xamee yëpp ne daal maa nekk ministre bi saytu wàllu loi ak àtte ci réew mi.
Now, in this regard.
ci kaw lii nag.
Though you've referred it, otherwise I was going to admit that it's not within the mandate of this commission, but you've allowed me to use that.
Yes, sir.
In this regard,
ci kaw loolu.
in my reflections without mirrors,
ci li nga xam ne ni loolu mooy li feeñ ci aw ma nag seetu.
I want to refer to Justice Hassan Diallo's memoir.
ma dem nag seet nag li nga xam ne ni mu ngi jëm ci wàllu Hassan Diallo.
Journey for Justice.
mooy Journey for Justice di yoon woo xam ne ñu ngi ut dëgg rek.
At pages 121.
ci fooy téeméer ak ñaar fukk ak benn.
122.
ñaar fukk ak ñaar.
And 171.
ak juróom ñaar fukk ak benn.
Where he points out.
foo xam ne wane na ne.
121.
ñaar fukk ak benn.
Enter Fafa Mbai as the new Attorney General and Minister of Justice.
dugal na nag di Fafa Mbai di ministre bu ees bi ñu saytuwaale loi ak àtte ci réew mi.
Armed with multiple degrees in political science and in law.
nga xam ne ni nag am na xam-xam bu yaatu ci wàlli liggéey ak political science ak wàlli loi.
A well-read man.
di nit koo xam ne nit ku jàng la.
With still a voracious appetite for board reading.
nga xam ne ni am na indi nag pour jàng lu bari.
His arrival generated a lot of excitement.
dugam nag nekk na loo xam ne ni indi woon na kontaante yu.
It was my first incarnation as Minister of Justice.
mooy njëlbeen yoon boo xam ne ni indi nañ ma le ministre bi saytuwaale loi ak àtte.
indiwaataat nañ ma.
Yes,
indiwaataat nañ ma.
Fafa came with fresh ideas.
Fafa nag ñëw na ak xalaat yu ees.
He had ideas of law reform.
ak yoo xam ne mu ngi aju ci wàllu wécceeku ay loi.
He had ideas of fostering greater integrity in government through a system of asset declaration and evaluation.
di loo xam ne nag dana gën a wéral nag lu jëm ci wàllu ngor ak nguur ak tamit nag li ci aju.
His first idea was that the chambers needed a better working environment than provided at the old stone and line structure at the quadrangle in Banjul, supported by wooden floorboards constructed during the colonial period.
Uncle Fafa, lapatol ko bobu.
Let me read it again.
Yes, please.
Fafa came with fresh ideas.
Okay, the interpreters got to know.
Fafa dafa ñëw ak xalaat yu bees.
He had ideas of law reform.
am na xalaat pour soppali ci ay loi.
He had ideas of fostering greater integrity in government.
am na xalaat na pour dugal yeneen bunta yu baax ci biir nguur gi.
Through a system of asset declaration and evaluation.
jaarale ko ci anam yoo xam ne ku ci nekk da ngaa wone li nga xam ne moo di sa am-am nga feeñal.
His first idea was that the chambers needed a better working environment.
xalaat bu njëkk bi nag mooy woon liggéeykaay boobu nag dañ soxla woon liggéeykaay boo xam ne bu neex a liggéeyee la.
than that provided by the old stone and lime structure at the quadrangle in Banjul. Supported by wooden floorboards constructed during the colonial period. We packed our office baggage to private premises at Bokul Street. Only to find those flats built for residents equally unsuitable. Off we went with our baggage and finally settled at the Marina Parade. Taking over the new but not fully occupied headquarters of the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation. The premises were ideal, being one of the few places purpose-built for office accommodation. Fafa was to eventually pilot through Parliament the Law Reform Commission Act 1983. To establish a commission to systematically review and revise the laws. And the Gambia Law Foundation Act 1983. As a medium where private individuals and corporations could contribute materially and financially to the improvement of the machinery of justice. So did he also the Evaluation of Assets and Properties and the Prevention of Corrupt Practices Act 1982. An asset declaration bill which would have made it mandatory for all public officers upon appointment and thereafter at regular specific intervals to declare their assets and liabilities on oath. And at page 171. Fafa Mbai's tenure of office as Attorney General and Minister of Justice was brief but turbulent.
Fafa Mbai nak jamono bi nga xamé ni nekkon na ministre bi saytu won wali loi ak atté ci réew mi nekkon na dir bu gatt way na bu yewé nday.
Appointed in early 1982.
Buñ sélo na ci jamono 1982 ci wéru ñëk ya.
Following the presidential and parliamentary elections.
Toftal nak wote presidential ak bu sisi nguur néegi député yi.
2 years later by June 1984.
ñaari at gannaaw loolu 1984.
He had resigned from the office.
Mu daldi bàyyi nag liggéey bi ci office bi.
A significant part of the turbulence of his tenure.
Li nga xam ne nii moo gën a feeñ nag gën a am solo nag ci lii gënoon a yéwén ci jamonoom.
Was associated with the establishment and operation of the Commission for the Evaluation of Assets and Properties and the Prevention of Corrupt Practices.
Mooy jamono ji nga xamee ni dëppoole nañ ko ak li nga xam ne mu ngi jëm ci wàlli ni ñuy yébaanee alal ak tamit nag ni ñuy teree lu jëm ci wàlli tappale ak labaj.
An institution.
te tamit nag ci liggéey buntu liggéeykaay bi.
Seen largely.
Gis nañ lu yaatu nag.
But erroneously.
Lu set.
As the creation of Fafa.
Ci ni nga xamee daal mooy loolu la Fafa def.
Rather than of the government as a whole.
Nii nga xam ne ni nguur gi yëpp li nga xam ne loolu la ñu def.
True.
dëgg la.
It was he who, as Attorney General.
moom la ndax jamono woon di Attorney General ministre bi saytu wàlli loi ak àtte ci réew mi.
Introduced the proposal to the cabinet.
daal di woon indi na xalaat bi ci cabinet bi.
And was seen as its champion.
te ñu gisee woon nag ne moom nag sant yoon la woon ci loolu.
But.
waaye.
It was a collective cabinet response that gave birth to it.
lii nag nekkoon na daal lépp ñoo cabinet bi ñoo boole ba lii daal di mën a sosu.
The decrees should be looked at the same light.
kon nag degree noonu lañ ko mën a seetee yi tamit.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mbai. That is very important material you have.
Jërëjëf Mr. Mbai. Loolu nga wone nii nag lu am solo la.
Hassan Jallow in his memoir, now Chief Justice of the Gambia. But he knew me. He was my Solicitor General. He did a lot of good work for this country.
Indeed.
Thank you.
I cannot dispute that fact, and I agree completely. And we all hold all of you to very high regard. You mentioned the issue of cabinet responsibility. And in that regard, in your case, you have had three bites at the cherry when it comes to these decrees. Mango gi dal xampa nga ci ñetti yoon ñu def ko olof yi faana faana which means in your capacity as Attorney General overseeing the drafting of these laws,
I wouldn't
say overseeing. I had intermediaries between me and the drafting division. I had the Solicitor General, I had the Registrar.
But ultimate responsibility. The Solicitor General does not go to cabinet.
Yes. Solicitor General be mom do them to cabinet.
It's the Attorney General who's the interface between the drafting department and cabinet.
Attorney General bi day mo nek digënté ña nga xamné ñoo di binda loi yoyu ak cabinet bi.
And those who write the laws do not write these laws without instructions. They receive drafting instructions.
Dañuy binda loi nak day duñ koy binda fekk amuñ digal bo xamné ci ña koy ñëk binda la joggé.
And those things come from the Attorney General.
Lool nak mu ngi bayé ko ci Attorney General bi.
True?
Yes, ultimately.
Yes. So the Attorney General
Attorney General bi moy ministre ci wali loi
has responsibility
mom nak amon na warugal
of what comes out of the Ministry of Justice.
lepp lo xamne rek modi baye ko ci liggéey ka ministre bi saytu atté bi.
You agree?
Anda nga.
Agree.
So the Attorney General there, because the Parliamentary Council does not draft laws in his name.
I think I have settled that.
Yes.
It was a division in my chambers.
Yes.
But as Attorney and Chief Government Legal Advisor,
yes,
I take responsibility.
Thank you very much. And also,
but I take responsibility, but was not the one who enacted the laws. Decrees were enacted by the council.
That's true. But I'm coming.
And sometimes they took my advice, sometimes they rejected my advice.
That's right. But the next step is at cabinet level too. You have responsibility, cabinet collective responsibility for these decrees. Correct?
Yes, because they were considered by cabinet before they went to the council.
And also at the third level, which is the ultimate level, at council level, you also share responsibility for these decrees.
No, not share responsibility. I was advisor. I was advisor. Not necessarily my advice was taken. I have said it in my statement.
But
Mr. Mbai, if you sit with a body like council and you give advice, and they reject the advice, and the decision is taken, and you don't resign, it means you have also acquiesced or adopted or accepted the decision.
Mr. Mbai, bu fekkee ne yow yaa ngi toog ak ay jàmbur yoo xam ne dañ leen tànn ñu jël ndogal boo xam ne yow mi ànduloo ci waaye terewul nag li nga ci bañ a ànd yëpp taxul ñoom ñu continuer doxal ko te loolu moo taxaw te bàyyiwuloo liggéey bon dafa mel ni ba tey ànd nga ak ñoom.
No. If I sit in a court of appeal,
bu ma toogee ci court d'appel,
a member of a panel of 3,
ci ñoo xam ne ni ay ñett lañ,
and 2 of them give a majority decision,
ñaar nag ànd nag benn kàddu,
and I give a dissenting decision,
nga gi ma kenn man ma ànd ci man kenn,
I don't resign because I disagree with the majority.
du ma bàyyi ndek ànduma ak ñi ëpp.
Secondly,
ñaareel bi,
I've explained my dilemma.
wal naa waxe naa biral naa fii li nga xam ne mooy sumay jafe-jafe.
Whether to continue my efforts
ndax ma continuer sumay pas-pas
against abuses of human rights,
lu jëm ci wàlli xeex nag ni ñuy xëtee yelleefi doomu aadama,
or leave
wala ma bàyyi
to make a bad situation getting worse.
pour nag gis ne mbir mi gën a métti garaaw.
I was halfway across the desert.
jamono boobu nag maa ngi woon rek ci àlli ndorong boo xam ne
the dilemma was either to go on,
mooy na ma dem ca kaw,
to retreat.
wala ñibbi.
That was my position.
loolu moo nekkoon suma taxawaay.
But even in that situation,
ba léegi
these bad laws,
loi yu bon yi,
were not just bad in the books. They were terrible or even worse in their application. And we all saw what was happening. As people were being unceremoniously taken from their homes, their properties being taken, some being unfairly or unlawfully detained without any judicial process or oversight. And that was the order of the day. And I refer to the very first few weeks where senior government officials were put in trucks and being driven all around town to humiliate them.
I think I have in my statement explained the circumstances and my situation as Attorney General. And that to that extent, I accept responsibility, not that I agreed with them, but that I didn't advise.
Okay.
And I think the repetition of it, which we have gone through already, may sound a bit prejudicial. You've said it already. And I've explained my position and the circumstances at the time.
If that is the way you feel about it, my sincere apologies. That was not the intention at all.
I know, but the point has been made.
All right.
And I've explained.
All right, thank you very much. I'll now move on to some other point. November 11. On Remembrance Day. This country witnessed the worst bloodbath in its history. When members of the council went to the two military barracks of Yundum and Fajara and summarily executed soldiers who were accused of planning or being involved in a coup d'etat. With impunity.
It was bad. The worst thing that happened to this country. The evidence given in this commission. All those who testified here in that regard. Not any one of them mentioned my name.
Certainly, there is no suggestion or allegation that you are part of it.
Yeah, just to make it clear, because the public is listening. Yes. And I would tell you that I was as devastated as anybody at that time, even without knowing what had happened. The events of November 11. The details and the ugliness of it, the horrible ugliness of it, was not known to many Gambians, the vast majority of Gambians, until the provisions of this, the sittings of this commission started. I remember having to vacate my premises at 45 Kairaba Avenue. My former teacher came for me and took me to his house. Only the watchman and the military security were there. And the American embassy offered me protection. American embassy, you must have heard it, played it on record when Yajame was asked. The American ambassador contacted Mr. Mbai that the situation was under control. That came in the recording of which you played on the. So I was just as any other Gambian. Maybe more than any Gambian.
wala sax man jéggi naa loolu.
The feeling of insecurity of my own being at that time.
Ni nga xamee noonu laa yëgee ñàkk kaaraange man ci suma bopp.
That is why A. Njai came for me.
loolu moo taxoon A. Njai ñëwaloon ma.
Why the American embassy offered me protection.
te itamit nag American embassy yi itamit joxoon ma ne dañ la mun a aar.
Because they thought I would be vulnerable, one of the most vulnerable citizens in this country.
jamono boo foogoon nañ ne sax danaa nekk koo xam ne ni daal.
Having regard to the EU ambassador's letter to me.
bu ma bàyyi xel nag leetar bi ma EU ambassador yooyu yónnee woon.
He was shocked by the lack of public recognition of the efforts I have made for the sake of this country.
ne daal dana naqari na lool ci ñàkk a ràññee gi ñu ràññee ci may pas-pas.
We will come to that.
And
perhaps maybe that would be a fitting point to conclude your testimony.
I have a lot to do.
Yes, I mean that point should be perhaps the conclusion of your testimony. In the meantime, let's deal with the other issues and then until we get to that point. Was November 11 discussed at the council?
No.
Very November 11. What time did you council?
Let me explain something. There were times when we had council meetings.
I'm not time when I'm on council meeting.
And the military members of the council
would
be in the office of the chairman
for
hours
while
the Secretary General and I were waiting in the cabinet room.
Secretary General
Same thing would happen in cabinet meetings.
I
remember Mrs. Satang Jau.
Mrs. Satang Jau.
Would turn to me and say, Chairman, you jump.
We've been sitting here for so long, they are chatting. And when we left here, we have a lot of things to do.
I said, well,
and I said, talk to the Secretary General.
The Secretary would say,
and the Secretary General will always say that they have already known that we are here.
There was one day when I walked out to the chairman's office.
There was a best madam office chairman
and held the branch of a tree which was protruding into his window.
That
military officers are used to respect time.
And military officers respect time.
We've been in the cabinet room for more than 1 hour.
I
feel like tagging this branch and give you a good whipping. Because one of them, Edward Singate, used to tell me that he was in the same class with my son Omar. And I took them as my children. And they all used to call me Uncle Human Rights. Uncle Human Rights. Any member of the cabinet at that time would accept and confirm that I was Uncle Human Rights in cabinet and in the council.
Uncle Human Rights.
There was a time when a delegation from Ghana came. And we went to see them at the airport. And somebody said, Uncle Human Rights.
Uncle Human Rights.
The leader of the delegation, Kwame Ahoy. The leader of the Ghanaian delegation, Kwame Ahoy.
Kwame Ahoy, GT1 group.
Told me this is the greatest compliment to an attorney general.
Called
the human rights attorney general in the military government. It's the greatest compliment. And a Gambian called Didi Jaite. Estate agent. One day when he returned from Ghana, he saw a poster at the airport. I don't want to appear self-serving. This is what he told me. They put my poster, my picture on a pillar. And said very good things about the efforts I was doing here, even when Gambians were not recognizing it. But I am satisfied with my conscience. And I have tried to do a great deal for my country. Thank you.
But in spite of all that, you lost your job. You lost your properties for almost a decade.
ñàkk nga sa alal lu jege fukki at.
And in 1996, you went to your hometown in Farafenni.
Atum 1996 nga
You
dem sa
went to
dëkk
Farafenni.
nga dem Farafenni.
And you were arrested.
ñu jàppale fa.
Tell us about it.
wax ñu mbir moomu.
Yes, in spite of all that,
ak loolu yëpp de
I lost my job.
ñàkk naa suma liggéey.
I lost my property for a decade.
ñàkk naa suma kër gi si diira fukki at.
And at the appropriate time,
ba ci waxtu wi gën nag wi doon dogal.
I'll be applying to this commission.
maa ngi bindu na si commission bi.
Consider me for reparation.
ñu dal di ma jox ndàmpaañ.
The losses I suffered.
ci ñàkk gi nga xam ne ni daal métti na ma.
Wrongly and unlawfully.
loo xam ne dëppoowut ak yoon tey tamit jaaduwut.
But when we come to that, I'll make the necessary application.
waaye buñ accès foofu nag danaa def nag ni mu jaadoo ci bindu boobu.
So tell us about the events in Farafenni.
wax ñu la xewoon Farafenni.
Yes. You know, I enjoyed writing this.
Yes.
And sometimes I feel better when I read it.
Mr. Mbai, even when you talk, when you say things off the cuff, it looks like you're reading it. I've been following.
Thank you.
This is memorized from writing it.
No, if I was your age, I'll throw it away and say it orally.
Even
if I was your age, I would have said all these things orally without looking at any document.
But even yesterday, you weren't looking at it, but you...
I'm now growing old.
You still memorized it.
Thank you.
Please go ahead. Read from it if you...
In November 1995,
November 1995,
my mother's younger sister,
rakki suma yaay,
who must have been in her late 70s and early 80s,
mu ngi toll si juróom-ñaar fukki atam yooyu,
sent her grandson to me
mu yónnee setam bi ci man,
to go and see her in the village.
ne naa ko seeti ca dëkk ba.
She was going blind.
Jamono boobu daal mu ngi gumbo si.
And wanted to see me before she did.
tey tamit daf ma bëggoon a gis balaa mooy gumbo.
My cousin Mbai and I left Banjul on Saturday morning, 27 January 1996, by GPTC bus.
ma doomi Baye Mbai nag maag moom ci lañ génn fii ci ànd ci boosi GPTC yi.
Because at the time my motor car has already been taken from me.
da jamono boobu nangu nañ suma oto ba.
To visit her in Mbayen village.
ñu dem seeti ko ca Mbayeen dëkk bu ñu xamee Mbayeen. Mbayeen.
And also to visit a sick uncle in Jayen Sanjal.
seeti tamit suñ benn nijaay bu feebar ca Jayen Sanjal.
A few miles east of Farafenni.
ay mile yu néew ca penku Farafenni.
By the time we arrived Mbayen village.
biñ àggee nag Mbayeen.
By the time we arrived there. Balañ fa àgga.
balaañ fay àgga.
My aunt was already blind.
jamono boobu nag suma tante boobu gumbo na.
We returned to Farafenni the next day, Saturday, 28 January 1996.
ñu wuñee ko Farafenni ci samedi jooju.
And proceeded to the Bambatenda ferry terminal.
ñu dem nag ci ferry bi ci Bambatenda.
Where we bought our tickets.
biñ jëndee suñ ticket yi nag.
Ready to cross over to Yilitenda.
pour jàll dem Yilitenda.
From where we return to Soma to catch the GPTC bus back to Banjul.
pour nag di dawali bus bi pour mu ñibbisiwaat ñu ñibbisiwaat Banjul.
While we were waiting to board the ferry.
jamono biñ toogee nag di xaar ferry bi.
2 police officers.
ñaari police.
One in uniform and the other in plain clothes.
kenn ki mu ngi sol uniforme kenn ki solul uniforme.
Arrested me.
ñu jàpp ma.
We all returned to Farafenni police station.
ñu delluwaat ñu ñëpp ca Farafenni police station.
In the same vehicle which had earlier taken us to the ferry terminal.
ci benn oto bi nga xam ne moo ñu yóbbu woon ca ferry terminal ba.
At the station we met ASP Keba Jones.
ci police station ba ñu fekk fa ASP Keba Jones.
Who told us that he had received orders from Banjul since the week before.
ne moom nag am na ndigal ci jóge ko Banjul.
to arrest me wherever I was seen.
ne daal nañ ma jàpp fépp fu ñu ma gis.
I asked him why.
ma ne laaj ko lan moo tax.
And what it was all about.
ak lan nag lan la.
He said that he did not know.
mu ne moom xamut ko.
He also told us that he was to escort us to Banjul.
tey wax nañu ne tamit dañ ñu war a gunge ba Banjul.
But that as he had no fuel in his vehicle.
waaye nag amul nag essence ci otoom bi.
We would have to spend the night at the police station.
foog si la ñu fanaan ci police station bi.
Until the next day, Monday, 29 January 1996.
ba altine ñaar fukki fan ak juróom-ñeent ci weeri January 1996.
We are never told the reason for our arrest.
mosu ñoo wax nag lan lañ def bañ jàppuñ.
It was during Ramadan.
tey tamit ci biir weeru koor la.
And I'm proud to share.
te maa ngi kon puugaroo pour wax ne.
The police station became a feast.
tey tamit nag police station bi nekk na bés boo xam ne nii.
food, ndogo came from everywhere.
Everything, lip dal ndogo, yep ñëwé joggé ko fune aksi fa.
From Hadi Seka.
Ñi Hadi Seka.
From Aida Salla.
Aida Salla.
From the compound of Chief Keba Jame.
Ci këri Keba Jame.
From Dr. Nyangado, Khalidou Nyangado.
Ci Dr. Khalidou Nyangado.
Who was my senior at Amitage.
Mom nak suma kuma jitu won la ca Amitage.
Next morning,
ASP
Keba Jones told us that instead of he,
ASP Keba Jones was ne mom sax
Inspector Kutubo Sabure.
Inspector Kutubo Sabure
would be our escort.
Mom mo ñu yobu.
But that we had to meet the inspector's fare to Banjul.
Then for inspector to Banjul.
We would have to pay his fare. We arrived at Banjul Police Headquarters about 2 o'clock in the afternoon and we are received by CMC Jawara.
Ñu agsi nak ci Banjul Police Headquarters bi ñaari waxtu ci bëccëg ki ñu fa teew na mooy CMC Jawara.
After receiving the inspector's report and a statement from me,
gannaaw bu mu jotee nag statement bi report bi ak ci man,
including the return ferry ticket we had bought the day before.
Ak ñaari ferry ticket yi ñu jëndoon balaa bés boobu.
CMC Jawara, after a few consultations on the telephone,
gannaaw bu mu diisoo tuuti nag ci téléphone bi,
released us.
Mu bàyyi ñu.
The next day, there was an Observer newspaper front page headline.
Ci ëllëg si nag ci kayiti xibaar bu ñu xamee Observer ci kayit bu njëkk bi.
The former Attorney General again.
Ne ki nekkoon Attorney General bi waat.
Did Fafa Mbai attempt to abscond?
Fafa Mbai dafa pare woon pour daw.
In my reaction,
ci suma kàddu nag pour tontu loolu.
Adding insult to injury.
Gën a yokk nag métit ci gaañu gaañu.
Which was a Weekend Observer, February 2 to 4, 1999 frontline headline, Fafa Mbai reacts.
Ci weekend bi nag ñu bind Fafa Mbai reacts mooy tontu na.
Fafa Mbai reacts.
Mooy Fafa Mbai day tontu na.
I concluded as follows.
Lii laa wax nag.
If I wanted to leave this country,
ne bu ma fekkoon ne dama bëggoon a génn réew mi.
I would not have waited all this long.
Du ma doon xaar waxtu wi yëpp.
Or choosing to do it all the way from Farafenni.
Wala sax xalaatuma dara lu mooy pour defee ko jëm fii ba Farafenni.
In any case,
ci lu munti xew nag.
At my age now,
ak suma at fi mu toll.
I am too old and therefore too late.
Dana màggat naa léegi te tardé naa trop itamit.
To leave this country for any reason.
Pour génn ci réew mi ci benn dalil.
I also think that after my 3 little children of 8, 10, and 13,
ak suma ñetti xale yi ñoo xam ne ni ñu ngi fi.
And I,
ak man ci suma bopp.
have been summarily evicted from our own house.
Nga xam ne ni génne nañ ma ci suma néeg.
In 1996.
Ci atum 1996.
The only house I have and ever had.
Benn kër bi nga xam ne moom rek laa am.
And in fact spent the last 19 to 20 years building.
Nga xam ne ni ci ñaar fukki at tabax.
And my car and all my household furniture seized from us.
Ak suma néeg suma auto beeg suma bagage néeg yëpp ñu nangu ko.
We should be left alone.
War nañ ñoo génn nag.
War nañ ñoo bàyyi léegi.
War nañ ñoo bàyyi léegi.
Excuse me. Just want to. Complete the printing. Sorry.
Proceed, please.
Sorry. I'm looking for a better copy of this. Some missing pages. It's cut at the end. Page 15. Good. Sorry about that. I concluded as follows. I want to repeat this. If I had wanted to leave this country, I would not have waited all this long, choosing to do it all the way from Farafenni. In any case, at my age now, I am too old. Never too late to leave this country for any reason. I also think that after my 3 little children of 8, 10, and 13 years old, respectively, and I have been summarily evicted from our own house on 11 January 1996. The only house I have and ever had. And in fact, spent the last 19 to 20 years building. And my car and all my household furniture seized from us. We should be left alone. To paraphrase Kipling, Rudyard Kipling, I had proceed in a little book which is in the service of my beliefs. I prefaced the book with Kipling's poem, If. I said, the paraphrase claim, then I quote, to keep our heads when all about us are losing theirs and blame it on us. Or being lied about, refuse to deal in lies. Or being hated, refuse to give way to hating. And holding on when there is nothing except the will which says to us, hold on. The great Prophet Muhammad had his Abu Jahl, but he also has his Abu Bakr, Omar, Usman, and Ali. Jesus Christ had his Pharisees and Sadducees, but he also had his Peter and John. Moses had his Pharaoh, but he also had his Aaron. Julius Caesar had his Brutus, Cassius, and Casca, but he also has his Artemidorus and Mark Antony. Stalin had his Trotsky, Bukharin, and Beria, but he also has his Vereshchukov and Molotov. It is with this sense of history and an illimitable faith in Allah that my spirit remains incrushable. Sometime in 2006, the Inspector General of Police at the time, this is published in the newspapers, and I have them.
Yes, please. You can provide them later.
Yeah. Sometime in 2006, the Inspector General of Police at the time, popularly called Tatin Baji, bless his memory, 2006, he died a few days ago.
Tatin Baji
visited me in my chambers and suggested that I write to the President and ask for the return of my property at 45 Kairaba Avenue. The Attorney General and Minister of Justice at the time, Sheikh Tijan Haidara, also made the same suggestion. The Secretary General, Mr. Ali Ngom,
Secretary General Mr. Ali Ngom,
was also of the same view. I hesitated to do so.
But
an old good friend and well-wisher, Pate Bajaha, came to my chambers and strongly urged me to do so. Eventually, I wrote, and by letter delivered to me by Mama Kinta Jawara, at the State House, my property was returned to me. I've been trying to see this letter, the letter I wrote and the reply. Because when I wrote, because they urged me to do so, that he was ready now to give me my property.
Who was he?
The President.
The President Bion.
And let me just write. They tried to urge me, just write to get back your property. And I wrote, I've not been able to find this letter and the reply. But I remember saying that I'm writing to you to ask you to invoke your constitutional prerogatives to return me my property, where I can return to with my family, etc., etc. I said, I know that I've been trapped in a lie so perfect that the truth did not save me. Mangom Sise picked that quotation and was one day telling me, trapped in a lie so perfect that the truth could not save me. And that was what I used in my letter. And I got it right immediately. Mama Kinsa Jawara, then at the State House, called me, Uncle Fafa, I have a good letter for you. Yeah. Can you come and take it? I said, how can I come with the security? He said, we'll arrange that. They will allow you to come in. I walked it. I didn't drive. I walked it from Hill Street to the State House. They were expecting to allow me. When I reached Mama Kinsa's office, as she gave me the letter, the telephone rang, and she was wanted maybe by the president. He delivered the letter to me, and I walked back to my chambers. I refused to open it. When I reached Fana chambers in Hill Street, I stood by the window for a long time, looking for any NIA officers coming around. Eventually, I went home. But I will not read the letter until I have my lunch. Because if I read it, I may not have my lunch. At 5 o'clock, I will not read it after 5 o'clock. I say 5, 5. 8 o'clock, I will not read it. I will read it before going to bed. But if I did, I may not be able to sleep. I took my ablution and opened the letter. The president giving orders that my property be returned to me, together with all that have been seized from me. I put it under my praying mat and slept on it, thinking that I'll have nightmares.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mbai. Perhaps this is a convenient time to stop for the first break, and then you would proceed with your testimony when we return.
Thank you. Mr. Mbai, ñu noppale ko ji tuuti nag bu njëlu si waate nga eggali.
Thank you very much.
Council, when we come back, if you can, from your compendium of decrees, just give us the number of decrees that were drafted when witness was Attorney General, and also perhaps tell us which decrees are still in force when we come back. So we will resume at 12:45. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.